Wrap-up from Romania. The Holy Father beatifies 7 martyrs during his trip to the majority Orthodox country. Plus, what Pope Francis said on the plane ride back to Rome about Pope Benedict XVI. Strengthening ties. The President and First Lady are in England. Why their visit ran into immediate controversy. Clergy abuse crisis. Church officials in the U.S. release updated information on the number of misconduct claims. And their best shot. Catholic seminarians and priests in Rome go to battle on the soccer field. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, June 3rd, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis is back in Rome tonight after his 3-day trip to Romania. He visited the majority Orthodox country to build bridges between Catholics and Orthodox churches. He has beatified 7 Greek Catholic bishops who were martyred during Romania's communist regime. EWTN Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren has more.
Speaking in Latin, the Holy Father beatifies 7 martyrs in the city of Blaj. They were imprisoned, tortured, and killed between 1950 and 1970. He told the estimated crowd of 60,000 the bishops gave their lives to, quote, oppose an illiberal and ideological system. The chant-filled Mass followed the Byzantine rite of the Greek Catholic Church, which is loyal to Rome. During his homily, the Holy Father warned about the new ideologies threatening Romanians today. It was an apparent reference to gender issues, same-sex marriage, and other secular trends the Holy Father previously has called ideological colonization. Later on Sunday, Pope Francis apologized to the ethnic Roma community, also known as Gypsies, for having been discriminated against by Christians and Catholics. Ethnic Roma are often among the poorest and least educated citizens in Central Europe. In his time as Holy Father, Pope Francis has made it a point to ask forgiveness for past injustices. On Saturday, the pouring rain didn't stop the faithful from waiting for the Holy Father at the most important pilgrimage site in the country, dedicated to the Virgin Mary. One Catholic Romanian says the Pope's visit brought her great joy. The showers cleared up just in time for Pope Francis to celebrate Mass. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
On his flight back to Rome, Pope Francis told reporters he draws strength from his relationship with Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI.
Ogni volta che vado da lui a visitarlo lo sento così.
The Holy Father said each time he visits the Pope Emeritus, he feels more like family. Benedict stepped down as the leader of the Catholic Church in 2013 and lives in Vatican City. Catholic news agency's Vatican analyst Andrea Gagliarducci joins us from Rome. Andrea, you were on the flight. What else did he say about his relationship with Pope Benedict?
Oh, well, Pope Francis said that Pope Benedict gives him a lot of strength. He says that when he goes to meet him, he just let him speak. And he speaks slowly, but he's always lucid. He said that the problem is not in his mind, because the mind is always lucid, but the problem is in his knees. And he also referred to Benedict as a tradition, in the sense not that the tradition is a museum, but in the sense that it's a patrimony. And he also mentioned a phrase that he liked a lot from L'Osservatore Romano, he read in L'Osservatore Romano, that says that tradition is the guarantee of the future. And so this is what Benedict XVI is to him, a guarantee to the future. He also made a reference to conservative Catholics, he said integralists, that want to keep the traditions in the ashes. He said tradition is a living tradition, it moves a lot. But Benedict XVI to him is very important because it is just like the roots that gives some lymph to the rest of the body.
On board the papal flight, the press conference, the Holy Father made a plea for the faithful to pray for Europe. Why Europe?
Well, there was a question by the German group of journalists, and they asked about the recent European elections that saw the victory of many nationalist forces, but the Pope did not want to address this issue directly. He referred to 5 speeches he delivered on Europe since the beginning of his pontificate, especially the speeches he delivered in Strasbourg at European Parliament at the Council of Europe, and he said that Europe needs to get back to its original identity. It was implicit that he meant the Christian roots of Europe, even though he never mentioned that. But he reiterated that many times. And at the end of the press conference, he wanted to take the floor again. They were greeting all the journalists, but he said, well, I ask all the journalists, those who are believers, to pray that Europe will regain its identity, and those who are not believers, are non-believers, that they hope that Europe will regain its original identity.
Andrea, after braving the rain and mud on Saturday, there were early morning calls. I know that trip with the Holy Father is absolutely grueling. Did you have a chance to get out and talk to local Catholics?
Yes, I spoke to the Catholics over there. He had many chances to get along with them. They were very happy with the papal visit because this reinforced them a lot. Catholics are a minority there. They're the 7.4% of population. The Orthodox is the predominant part of population over there. But the Catholics needed the presence of the Pope, and that was very important. We might say that relations between Orthodox and Catholics are not as smooth as it can appear after the Pope's visit. For example, during the meeting between Pope Francis and Patriarch Daniel, it was supposed that the prayer of Our Father was prayed first by Pope Francis and Catholics and after by the Orthodox, because the Orthodox cannot pray together with Catholics.
That's it. Fascinating. Thank you so much, Andrea Gagliarducci, Vatican analyst for Catholic News Agency.
Thank you.
Steve Bannon's idea for a Catholic school near Rome is on the rocks. Italy's populist government is blocking the former White House advisor's plans. Bannon was set to open the Dignitatis Humanae Institute in a medieval monastery. It was designed to train future populist leaders. On Friday, government officials revoked the group's right to the property. And they say the academy didn't finish required maintenance work, and they deny those claims. President Trump begins a week-long visit to Europe commemorating the 75th anniversary of D-Day. It all started with a royal welcome in Britain, where turmoil over Brexit has left the country in confusion. President Trump jumped right into the debate, sparring with top officials. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. President Trump marks the official state visit to Britain as he continues a verbal battle with the mayor of London. The president leaves behind turmoil here in Washington to enter a political firestorm in the UK. A royal gun salute for President Trump as his state visit got underway. Queen Elizabeth greeting him at Buckingham Palace, and tea time with Prince Charles marking the start of the ceremonial week ahead, complete with D-Day commemorations and his first official presidential visit to Ireland. The pageantry in Britain comes a day after the president fought off Democratic cries for his impeachment back home.
There is no basis whatsoever for impeachment. None. There was no collusion, there was no obstruction, there was no crime.
President Trump leaves fallout from the Russia investigation and enters Britain's own brand of political turbulence following failed attempts to secure a Brexit deal. It caused British Prime Minister Theresa May's resignation, and President Trump hasn't been shy about jumping into the controversy, endorsing conservative Boris Johnson as her replacement.
Well, I may meet with him. He's been a friend of mine. He's been very nice. I have a very good relationship with him.
If Johnson represents a political ally in England, London's mayor has become a vocal foe. Mayor Sadiq Khan declares the president a political far-right menace to liberal democracy around the world, writing, "Donald Trump is just one of the most egregious examples of a growing global threat." President Trump firing back. He is a stone-cold loser who should focus on crime in London, not me. Khan reminds me very much of our very dumb and incompetent mayor of NYC, de Blasio, who has also done a terrible job. And despite audio recording that proves otherwise, the president denies describing the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, as nasty just days ago. He was responding to her criticism of him in 2016. Now today, the president said the royal family has been fantastic, noting relations with the UK are very strong, and he adds, great love all around. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thank you, Mark. A dozen people are dead in a military crackdown in Sudan. It prompted global condemnation from the United States, Germany, and the African Union. They say it was wrong for Sudan's security forces to open fire on a month-long sit-in protest. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The head of the African Affairs Bureau here at the State Department says today's attack is part of a wider effort by Sudan's ruling military to clamp down on free expression. Sudan is already one of the worst places in the world for religious freedom. The military, however, blames the violence on drug dealers and other criminals, and they say they actually ran from them and hid from authorities among protesters.
Sudanese security forces move in on a sit-in protest, opening fire, torching tents, and beating activists. In these videos posted online, Sudanese citizens run through streets lined with tents as the sound of gunfire filled the air. The assault happened in the war-torn country's capital, Khartoum. The city has been ruled by the Transitional Military Council since April, when a protest movement forced Sudan's strongman, Omar al-Bashir, to step down after 30 years of rule. Last week, the top military officials accused protesters taking part in a sit-in near the Army's headquarters of attacking its soldiers and protecting violent outlaws. But opposition leaders accuse the military of using improper force against civilians. The opposition spokesman says military leaders have not been respecting agreements that had been reached between the protesters and the armed forces. Sudanese protest organizers say the number of people killed in the military's assault has risen to more than a dozen, and the Sudan Doctors Committee says more than 200 people were injured, many by gunfire. Last week, the military shut down the Al Jazeera News Bureau in Khartoum. The satellite news channel had asked the military to reopen the office. Many see the shutdown as an effort to silence mass media.
Christian advocates have long highlighted the plight of believers in Sudan. The former president favored Muslims, and the government persecuted Christians if they openly prayed or carried a Bible. Churches were shut down and even demolished in some cases. As of now, less than 2 million out of a total population of 41 million are Christian. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. Coming up, fight for the unborn. We look at the role of pro-life issues in the race for the White House. And remembering the Catholic Queen of Creole cuisine. A new report says from 2017 to 2018, there was a significant rise in the number of sexual abuse allegations against clergy. The study covers the year before the Pennsylvania grand jury investigation found hundreds of priests had abused more than 1,000 children over 70 years. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops says allegations of misconduct more than doubled from roughly 700 to nearly 1,500. 92% of those priests were already dead or removed from ministry. The group also says it's spending more than $250 million to compensate victims and children for children protection. The leader of the Diocese of Providence is defending his tweet urging Catholics not to support or attend events for Gay Pride Month. On Saturday, Bishop Thomas Tobin wrote such events, quote, promote a culture and encourage activities that are contrary to Catholic faith and morals. They are especially harmful for children. Yesterday, he said he and the Catholic Church have respect and love for members of the gay community, but adds his job is to teach the faith clearly and compassionately, even on difficult and sensitive issues. A federal judge is considering whether to block a new law in Indiana banning a second trimester abortion procedure. The ACLU is seeking a preliminary injunction on the measure prohibiting dilation and evacuation abortions. It is set to take effect on July 1st. And late Friday, lawmakers in Illinois passed a bill declaring a fundamental right to abortion, requiring insurance companies to cover it. We're waiting on the governor's signature. 9 other governors have passed pro-life bills, which Planned Parenthood is saying is an emergency. Jason Calvi joins me with more on the issue and how it's playing out with candidates on the campaign trail. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. This is really the tale of two Americas. Illinois, like New York, passing bills to protect abortion. States like Missouri and Alabama passing bills to protect unborn life. Speaker Pelosi says these abortion bans cannot stand, and Democratic White House hopefuls echo that cry.
Senator Kamala Harris rallies with Planned Parenthood.
We can never take for granted that any of the gains that we have achieved will be permanent.
She wants the federal government to approve state restrictions on abortion. The senator joined 13 presidential rivals, all trying to win support in her home state, at the California Democratic Party convention.
The issue of choice is seen as a women's issue. I don't see it that way. I see it as a human issue.
Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden was not there. The Catholic and former vice president was instead.
I love you guys. You're changing the world, not just the United States.
Speaking at a dinner for a group dedicated to gay rights. And in Missouri, the state's only abortion clinic stays open.
We are the people.
We are the people.
A judge will take up that issue again tomorrow morning. The state's Republican governor cites reasons for not renewing the clinic's license.
This is not an issue about the pro-life issue at all. This is about a standard of care for women in the state of Missouri. Whether it's this clinic or any other hospital, they should have to meet the same standards. They know what these standards are. They know they were deficient.
Planned Parenthood fires back. Its president tells CNN that Missouri's complaint is not based on medical fact. Tonight, pro-life leaders will huddle right here in Washington, D.C. Nikki Haley speaking at the Susan B. Anthony List dinner. This organization fights for lawmakers who defend the unborn. Lauren?
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thank you, Jason. Joining me now, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief for The Hill. Bob, nice to see you.
Hey, Lauren.
Nationally, is abortion going to be a major issue on the campaign trail?
Definitely. I think it's going to be maybe even more so than 2016. Certainly you have the Supreme Court. Now you have all these states that are having controversial laws on both sides, and both sides are engaged, and we're not even in 2020. I think it's going to be a big issue.
Who's going to benefit more?
That remains to be seen. I think Republicans were more unified before the Alabama law, and that's when you saw President Trump and other Republican leaders say, wait a minute, I am for certain exceptions, rape and incest, and that was Ronald Reagan's position. But I do think, by and large, Republicans are unified on this, but also Democrats are unified on it. Democrats basically have moved left. There are not a lot of pro-life Democrats anymore.
We're going to get to that in just a minute. You know, as part of the challenge to Roe versus Wade, we have seen all of these pro-life laws on the state. 9 states so far this year have signed laws restricting abortion. You can see them right there from Ohio, as you mentioned, Alabama, Georgia, Utah, Louisiana, all of these. In Missouri, we're waiting to hear. But Louisiana's governor, John Bel Edwards, is the only Democrat to sign a heartbeat bill into law. And as you say, there aren't that many pro-life Democrats. Will there ever be a place again in the party for them?
I don't think so. I mean, it's certainly their numbers are dwindling. And remember, Edwards is up for re-election this year. So will the 2020 Democrats support his re-election? Obviously, he's in a red state, but he is a Democrat. So are the Democrats, is it a big tent or not so much? I mean, recently, not so much.
Well, and I talked to Kristen Day, who's the executive director of Democrats for Life of America, and she's hopeful that there will be room in the party for Democrats like her to take a vocal pro-life position. But is it just like the rest of Washington, black and white?
Yes. And if you look in Congress, there are only 3 Democrats who are pro-life. One of them is Dan Lipinski from Illinois. And the left has tried to take him out repeatedly, and they're going to try again in 2020.
With Marie, I can't quite remember her last name,
yes,
but she is fighting him.
It's the same candidate who almost beat him last time.
Right.
So she's going to get a lot of support from certainly Democrats and Democratic causes.
And you know, John Bel Edwards, he's up for election, and he has been blasted by Democrats on the left and the right, calling this measure egregious and offensive. And there's no wonder, it seems to me, why politicians aren't running on this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's made certainly some type of calculation that this is going to help him come the fall. At the same time, he's been saying, listen, I've been pro-life. I've been consistent here. I'm not changing my position. And this is consistent with what I've said before.
Right. Now, the other piece of this is that running candidates in governor's races, in addition to state races, everybody seems to be very concerned that the more that they hear about these extreme laws on either side, New York being one of them, and on the other side, what proponents of abortion call an extremist law in Alabama, that these bills are going to force Roe versus Wade to be overturned and at the Supreme Court, and that's really where why everybody is doing this. So I guess the question I have to you is it likely? Which bills are going to get there? And how quickly could we see something like that?
The timing is unclear, but without a doubt, both sides want to have this. Certainly, the right certainly wants to have Roe v. Wade revisited. So overall, I think we're going to have a case. Now, the Roberts Court, though, has decided not to go after and do sweeping rulings. We've seen recently they've kind of dodged some hot-button issues, including abortion. But eventually, I think they're going to have to rule on this.
All right. Thank you so much, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. We love when you stop by. Thank you. Up next, some priests and seminarians have one goal in mind. A famed New Orleans chef who sent meals to jailed civil rights leaders has died. Leah Chase cooked for generations of people at her Dookie Chase's restaurant. Civil rights activists met there and made plans on voter registration and other issues. Chase, who was Catholic, was known as the Queen of Creole cooking. On Holy Thursday, she only served green gumbo and fried chicken. Chase was 96. Yesterday marked the 40th anniversary of Pope John Paul II's historic Mass in Warsaw before a crowd of 250,000 people. He said the Poland's communist government cannot come between citizens and God. Historians say the Holy Father's 9-day visit to his homeland reshaped the spiritual and political landscape of the 20th century. And the White House released a message for the anniversary saying in part, quote, "The United States and our allies stand united against the shackles of communism and as a beacon of liberty and prosperity throughout the world." Finally, tonight, a seminary in Rome is made to pay a harsh penalty. Okay, not that harsh. We're just talking soccer here. The Clericus Cup Championship was Saturday in Rome. Pontifical Urban University won. They scored 3 goals in the second half, including 2 penalties to defeat Sedes Sapiense Seminary. And the competition is in its 13th year. It's open to priests and seminarians in Rome. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.